So 250,000 subscribers is actually 150,000 more than the official Star Trek YouTube channel, which I think that just makes us the official Star Trek YouTube channel.
Hello, how are you? Sean Ferrick here for Trek Culture, and the first thing I want to say is thank you. Thank you so much for 250,000 subscribers. Folks, this is incredible. Like, this is something we hope for, but you know, we never take for granted. And we really just want to say thank you so much. Now, we did a little video celebrating it, so that is probably pinned in the comments below, so please have a look at that. But mostly, I just want to say thank you so much. Yous are awesome. We're going to get into the episode, so it's part one of the two-part season finale of season one of Star Trek Prodigy. Now, in a way, it's felt like it's taken us quite a while to get here because of that mid-season break in the middle, but I'm quite happy to say that it has been worth the wait, and we still have 1 week to go, so boom, Supernova, part one, let's go. Straight in with the up this week, we're getting all these Starfleet ships. I mean, this is just wonderful. We have got Centaur class, we've got Akira class, we've got Dauntless, we've got Defiant class, and we've got Sovereign class as well. It's an absolute feast for the eyes. Then there's lots of nice panning shots as well, so one might even say it's adult entertainment. And it is definitely an up from us this week. So even though the situation is a little bit dire with the protostar sitting there with the living construct ready to get hailing frequency with it, it's quite nice to see. Now, of course, we have the problem is that Janeway is trapped in the brig, and as Dal points out, he might have made everyone on the Dauntless think she's, you know, crazy. That's going to be an issue, we presume. That's going to be an issue. And, you know, we presume correctly. But just if we can take just another couple of seconds just to be like, oh, look at those Starfleet ships. Just look at them. While on the protostar, everyone is like, well, quite understandably, they're now at a stage where like, we need to sort this out. We've got a wee bit of an issue with, you know, a fleet full of starships pointing weapons at us. On board the protostar, we have Dal, we got Rok-Tahk, we got Janeway, we got Gwyn, Zero, Jankum, and Murph. Oh, how we loved Murph in this episode. Things are looking slightly dire. Jankum is down trying to get the proto-drive up working again. Meanwhile, on the bridge, they're trying to get the shields recharged. They're trying to get the engines working. You know, it's looking a bit grim. And as Dal says, you know, he wants to make sure that everyone is, you know, safe and alive. They've been in stickier situations. He's going to make sure that they make it safely to Starfleet Academy. Now, Rok-Tahk is about to go, well, actually, Dal, and Gwyn goes, hold on. Basically, no, yeah, we're all gonna get there. It's gonna be fine, right, Rok-Tahk? And Rok-Tahk picks up, oh yeah. Because of course, what they don't want to say to Dal at this moment is, actually, Dal, because of your augmented status, you're not going to get into Starfleet Academy. If we go back to the reveal that Dal is augmented, right? So we're going back a couple of weeks now. This leads me to a down. Now, the down is that, as sure as Admiral Janeway knew straight away last week that augments would not be allowed in Starfleet Academy, wouldn't hologram Janeway have had that information as well? Now, if this was something that was just simply not discussed in front of hologram Janeway, then perhaps, I'd still question it, but perhaps it'll be fine. But they went through, frankly, so many tests, Kobayashi Maru, everything for Dal. So the second it became obvious that Dal was augmented, would Janeway not have felt the need to tell him? Because if we take for a second, let's assume that hologram Janeway doesn't have all of Admiral Janeway's memories, even though last week we did do the thing where they discussed each other's memories. Surely, if hologram Janeway knew enough to start taking them through the Academy preparation trials, wouldn't question 1 on the application to Starfleet Academy, because it's so important, be, are you augmented or genetically engineered? That for me was a down. It does feel like something that would have come to light before this episode. Now, the Protostar engages in some pretty cool evasive maneuvers by like listing gently to the left. You know, we've got, the slippery dippery doodle? Slippery dipply doo? Slidoobity doobly. Shloobity, Slovene. The ship does a whirligig and they're avoiding some of the fire from the other ships. This is good. This is very, very good. On board the Dauntless, what you've got Admiral Janeway sitting in the brig, bloody useless there. Not an awful lot that she can do from that position. Up on the bridge, you've got Commander Tysus is in communication with Admiral Jellicoe. Automatic up for me. Oh, Ronnie Cox. And he's very Jellicoe again. He's basically get it done. Like he's gone back to Captain Jellicoe. Now, I did think it was a little bit odd, I will say, right? So you've got 4-star or 4-pip Admiral Jellicoe on the big screen. You've got Commander Tysus talking to him. Ensign Essentia has a chat with the Admiral? I don't know, that just kind of like, would that not have raised an eyebrow or two? The fact that it's like, all right, Ensign, you're a bit above your station, aren't you? We have been commanded. Okay, right, I do the commands here. So, quite funny. Janeway is there trying to convince the security guard in front of the brig that she is who she says she is. She is in full control of her faculties and she needs to be freed. This officer turns around and we get a deep cut. She turns around and says, "You lied to the Devore Imperium once about smuggling telepathic aliens on board your ship on Voyager." And Janeway's a bit like, oh, okay, right, wasn't expecting that. Yes, all right, that is accurate, I did, but that was years ago. But then the officer smiled and she says, well, it wasn't that long ago for me, because I was one of those Brunari children you protected. And she takes down the force field. Absolute up from me. Not only is it a deep cut to an excellent episode of Star Trek Voyager, and also, incidentally, Kate Mulgrew's favourite episode of Star Trek Voyager. Several years ago, there was a captain's box set where each of the then captains at the time were interviewed about what their favourite episodes were, and yep, Kate Mulgrew picked Counterpoint. And I thought, wow, what a great way to include that. And also, this absolutely works. Yes, I would well imagine that that feeling of loyalty would still be there. So, Janeway is now free from the brig, free to run up all the way to the bridge. Well, the ships have been firing at the Protostar, weakening the shields and weakening the shields. They can see that shields coming down, that's inevitable at this stage. So, Gwyn makes the decision, we're going to need to arm ourselves. And so she walks off the bridge, and Dal runs after her, basically in a kind of a bravado, like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And Gwyn goes, there's something I need to tell you. And Dal takes a second and kisses her. And they both break away, and she's like, what are you doing? And he's like, oh my God, oh sorry, I misread the signals, And that's it. They don't linger on it. There isn't the awkwardness. And that is why I'm giving that an up. When you see pairings like this on any show, you sort of, you always in some way or another, because this is how television has done this forever, you kind of get the will they, won't they? And thankfully the show hasn't leaned in too hard for that due to the nature of the ages of these characters. I do think it was clever, like, a little peck on the lips, there you go, yes, we probably all thought it was going to happen at some point, and they both go like, oh, okay, and that's it. And I love, they don't bother with a romantic subplot. They don't bother by lingering on something that could just be awkward. Gwyn just goes, oh, no, anyway, you can't enter Starfleet. And Dal's a bit like, sorry, what? Gwyn breaks the news because I think she begins to feel that by arming herself against whoever may board the ship, she could end up either stunned, taken prisoner, or worse, killed, which means somebody else will break the news to Dal. Now, she wants to be the one to let him know, because as his friend, he'll know that coming from her, it's because she wanted to save his feelings, not to hurt him. And it works, it really works. And not only that, but Dal, he is hit by this. And he does, he goes back and he sits down, he kind of has a think for a second, and he goes, right, if I can't get into the academy, I'll make sure you guys can. This is not the same Dal that we got in the first couple of episodes. Yes, of course, it is the same Dal. Look at the growth. Possibly more than any other character Since Star Trek came back in 2017, Dal has been through one hell of a journey. In a single season, I mean. Obviously we've got Burnham's journey in Discovery, which has spanned several seasons. You know, I'd even say Tilly for that as well. But in a single season, Dal went from being probably my least favourite character to one of my favourite characters. And I'm delighted to see it. The time has come on the Dauntless for Essentia to reveal who she really is. Now, when she walked into the transport room, my first thought was, why is she doing this? She stands up on the transporter pad and she activates the little button on the back of her neck and she becomes her traditional Vauna Cat appearance. And, you know, the other officers are a bit like, hold on. And she knocks out the two on either side of her. The transporter chief is standing there going like, well, I don't know. Because, of course, Dreadnought just walks up behind him and Kirk foos him. And that's that. Just the absolute nonchalance of Dreadnought doing that was, I had a giggle. So Dreadnought, Essentia, and the Diviner all beam over to the Protostar. You know, the kids run around the corner and straight away the Diviner and Essentia fire at them. And things are looking bad. Like, you know, we don't want the Protostar to send that hail out. So, naturally, Dreadnought stays to distract the kids while the Diviner and Essentia head toward the bridge. I have it down. So, in this battle with Dreadnought, proving once again why Dreadnought is terrifying and just like, no. Dreadnought's scary. Jimmy Simpson, you scare me with your voice. But, you know, the kids, they give it a valiant battle. Then Dreadnought tosses a gravity bomb that takes down Jankum and Rocktuck. I'll get to that now. Got Dal pinned up against a wall, having knocked out Zero as well with a device on their shell. Basically, Dreadnought has got him against the wall. And he goes, basically, target eliminated. And then Murph comes in. Hold on to Murph now for a second. I just want to finish this point about the down. So Dreadnought, who is basically the embodiment of doom. I'm going to ask a rhetorical question because we all know the answer to this question. Why didn't Dreadnought kill these kids? Now, we all know the answer. This is not a show where kids get killed. But for the first week, I mean, this really felt like plot armor this week. That's my down, is that you have Dreadnought who is so overpowered that really Dreadnought probably could have killed them all without much effort. Like, look at even that gravity mine, for example. It takes down Jankum, but then Rocktuck goes slamming down on top of Jankum. And I mean this with all the love in my body. But if a Brikar is going to fall on a Tellarite, that Tellarite becomes soup. You know? All he needed to do for Dal was just a quick, you know, and that would be Dal. So the only reason in this scene that those kids survive is plot armor. I have to say it. And also because this is the same Dreadnought who last week was about to stick Admiral Janeway out in airlock. You know what I mean? This is a Dreadnought who doesn't seem to really mind offing the organics, shall we say. So yeah, that stuck out. Cool fight scene, really enjoyed it, but that stuck out for me as a down this week. Murph. Take it up, Murph. I mean, just how much fun was this? Like, I love the fact that Murph went from cute and cuddly and, okay, can swallow a protostar, you know, but still, cute and cuddly and everything, to, like, basically blues singer and, you know, kung fu artist. But the bit where Murph jumps up and is basically just patting its bum all over Dreadnought's face, I had much more of a belly laugh than I probably should have at that one. That tickled me the right way. Oh, that was hilarious. And then, you know, Dreadnought freezes Murph against a wall, and I kind of like, I'm sure Dreadnought's just there like, okay, what? I enjoyed that a lot. While all this has been happening, on the bridge, Essentia has been fighting with Gwyn, who stayed behind on the bridge, and they're using their basically programmable matter swords to fight each other, and the Diviner goes to check on the living construct, but Essentia is really just trying to keep him away while she takes on Gwyn, and then he comes back up, and the Diviner chooses to protect Gwyn, and Essentia saw it coming. And so he is able to take Gwyn's weapon, throw it at Essentia, who grabs it, chucks it right back, it goes straight through him. And we all get a bit of a shock. We're like, oh, okay, all right. What happens then is Dreadnought arrives back, and Essentia goes to the captain's chair and sends a hail on all Starfleet frequencies. And Janeway arrives just 1 second too late on the bridge. It's too late. They've already answered the hail from the protostar. Essentia is there. She's like, that's it. We're going to save Solomon. That's it. And then the living construct kicks in. And that's when we start to see, oh, this is scary. So the living construct, basically, this shockwave comes out, right? And all of the ships around, all of the lights turn red. Is there a reason? Probably not. Do I love it? Absolutely yes. I love all of this episode so much, particularly all of the starships in it, that this is hardly going to shock anybody. My Latinum up of the week is just how wonderful these ships look. You know, as the living construct goes through, like, think about it. You've got the beautiful, beautiful Centaur class. Also, make sure that you stick around in the cetacean observations for a little bit more of a detailed look at some of these ships. But we look, first of all, we got the Centaur class that fires on a Sovereign class starship. First of all, don't you dare fire on a Sovereign class starship. Thank you very much. Now, the Sovereign class starship then turns around and fires on the Akira class starship. Now, if you look very closely at these registry numbers, cetacean observations, cetacean observations. Now, there is one that is completely unmissable. The USS Defiant is present at this battle. And I was a bit like, what? The actual Defiant, like, the Defiant is there. I'm like, okay, who's in command of the Defiant at this point? Is it stationed at Deep Space Nine? Probably not. Not at this stage. So, that was lovely to see. But it's like, you know, oh, I don't have time for thinking of these things because it's now firing at the other ships. And in fact, there is a moment when the Defiant fires directly at the Dauntless, which for me is a little dig saying DS9 is just going to fire at Voyager. Up. On board the protostar, the kids break into the bridge and, you know, they're all pointing weapons and they're going like, Essentia, you'll pay for this. And she goes, maybe I will. Not today. And Dreadnought effectively forms an escape pod around her, and they escape up through the dome, the transparent aluminum. Now, thankfully, the kids aren't like immediately sucked into the vacuum of space. The force field kicks in, and then the whole breach repairs itself from what I assume is some sort of replicated matter, and I'm giving that an up, because I think that should be standard practice on all ships, because it looks great, and then perfect. And yes, like, you can replicate pretty quickly, so that seems absolutely perfect to me. I really like that. Now, sadly, the Diviner, it's not looking too good. Now, we get a lovely performance of John Noble as, you know, basically he plays Gwyn's dying father. And an up for me is the Diviner's arc this season. Similar to Dal, I suppose, when, you know, starts thoroughly unlikable, and then, now, while it was very much toward the end of his journey, you start to see he becomes a much more sympathetic villain. Now, on the flip side, you have Essentia, who is really, like, while maybe her motivations are positive, her actions certainly they lean far more toward villainess. Whereas the Diviner was single-minded in attempting to save his world. Now, that doesn't really excuse using Zero to make people lose their minds, but went a ways toward helping to redeem him right at the very end. Now, the wound is mortal, and by the looks of things, it is bye-bye John Noble, as there's this beautiful moment that actually reminds me a little bit of Kung Fu Panda. I know. And Oogway's ascension, you know, breaks apart into the blossoms. Well, this is a bit like that. It breaks apart into this lovely blue light. And it's a sad scene, but it is a lovely scene. And the kids are kind of like, we're a bit boned. You know, all these ships, we're dealing with the loss of the Diviner, and now we also have the fact that all these Federation ships are attacking each other. Janeway over in the Dauntless orders the evacuation of her ship because she can't think of anything else. I mean, they've lost power. So the next thing, all the power's gone. So the Universal Translator goes. That's an issue as well, because you have Jankum and Rocktalk are speaking in their natural tongue, which is not Federation standard. Now, Federation standard is effectively English. So Janeway is able to communicate with Dal and Gwyn, who can speak many languages, and they come up with the idea of, wait, Starfleet vessels are getting affected by this, but what about non-Starfleet vessels? And so then we get a scene of Gwyn sends out a general message, and so does the Dauntless, a general message, you know, to any non-Starfleet Federation allies. And we get a Klingon. I'm not going to go into the fact that, yes, we said before, well, Gwyn should have known Klingon and, you know, should have recognized the bird of prey and everything, but it doesn't take away from the fact that this is a pretty cool scene. So Gwyn is there talking. Actually, Gwyn is talking in Klingonese to this Klingon captain, and actually, I really like how they do the pan, because obviously, you know, standard episode, everyone just talking standard. Star Trek Beyond actually did quite a good one where you could hear both. You know, they were speaking their natural tongue, but actually then the universal translator would translate it to standard. Whereas here you kind of get a pan where like there's a little bit of an overlay where we go from Klingon to Federation standard, and I really like that. Klingon basically cuts off the call after Gwyn says, we're begging for your help here, we're begging for your help. And like, they're like, oh, all right then. But actually no, it's a brilliant moment. You know, Klingon birds of prey arrive, extending their shields to take the weapon's impact from the ships that are being crippled around them. Then we get Vulcan Sirach-class ships. Now, I did have a moment of like, hang on, they said non-Starfleet. What's a Vulcan? You know, Vulcans are very... But at the same time, yes, Vulcans probably... In fact, they do have their own fleet as well, as was also demonstrated in the Lower Decks episode, Wesh Douche. Now we get a Gorn hegemony. Hegemony? Gorn hegemony. I'm going with Gorn hegemony ship, and which was only ever seen in the remastered episode Arena of the original series. We get a Ferengi Decorah class Marauder. We get one of those Patarian freighters, and then a few minutes later on, we get the multi-use ship, which we saw as the Tellarite. We saw it as the Xindi Arboreal ship. We saw a few different. Was it Arboreal or Primate? Arboreal. Primate. Arboreal. Xindi Arboreal. Problem, there are not nearly enough of them. So even though you've got a couple of birds of prey flying around, but then one of them gets destroyed, you know, you've got the Vulcan ships are being fired on. It's this wonderful Dunkirk moment where you've got the civilians coming in to save everyone. Doesn't really quite go as planned. And the episode ends when we get more Federation ships flying in, because they're sending out all points distress calls, and then they fly in and they're like, you know, uh-oh, and there it is. Oh my God, I'm still slightly overwhelmed by this episode, and I love, you know, we have to see where it's going to go next week. But before we do that, why don't you come along with me to Cetacean Observations? I'm going to run through this kind of because I actually have more things to say here as well, right? So we get that shout out to Counterpoint from Star Trek Voyager's 5th season. Jellicoe returns. Now Dreadnought does his little bit of Kirk Fu. I'm just going to fire a little bit ahead. Just bear with me. We got Klingons, we've got a bird of prey, we got a Vulcan ship, we got Gorn, we've got freighter, Ferengi Tellarite ship. Now, the Starfleet vessels. We have the USS Defiant itself, and I thought that was cool. Then I had a close look at that Centaur class ship. That is the USS Centaur. That's Charlie Reynolds' ship, the actual one that appeared in Deep Space Nine, A Time to Stand. That's really bloody cool. Then the Akira class ship that the Sovereign class ship fires upon, I looked really close. That's the USS Thunderchild. That is the actual Akira class vessel that took part in the Battle of Sector 001. Oh my God, does this get cooler? Well, actually, it does. I did notice that the Sovereign class ship, the first one to appear, now that's important, the first one to appear is the USS Sovereign, right? So that's what's on the saucer section, okay? Now, what I didn't notice, I have to give absolute props to Jörg Hildebrand from Twitter, from Ex Astra Scientia. Which he did, he freeze framed this. The nacelles actually have NCC 1701E on them. So initially, he thought that, well, is the E taking part in this? But actually, no, it seems that every single ship had that for the front of it and that for the back of it. Now, there's 2 points I want to make. Now, the first thing I have to do is I'm going to give a down. Right, you're probably looking at me going, Sean, what? The Sovereign class ship that warps in at the end of the episode is the USS Sovereign, which is the ship that fires on the Akira class ship 20 minutes in the difference. So unless the Sovereign warped out of the battle and then warped back in again, I'm sorry to say that's a continuity error. And it's a big one, I'm afraid, because you do see the registry in relief. Gorgeous to see the ship, but yes, unfortunately, the ship appears twice. So that one is a down for me. But you might be happy to know this next one. I am going to hedge my bets on this episode. And seeing the Centaur, the Sovereign, the Thunderchild, and bloody right, the Defiant, with that gorgeous overhead shot that seems to be lifted directly from what we leave behind, or from what you leave behind. For me, it's too special seeing all these ships so beautifully arranged again, not to give this episode, this scene, this fleet battle, the dilithium up of the season. So you remember the rules of the dilithium up. This is the standout part of the season for me, and also we will take away one of the downs as well, because my goodness, it deserves it. Supernova Part 1 was a very big episode, and I am very interested to see what they're going to do next week. Before we go, I want to give a special moment to a musical cue in this episode. When Gwyn is sitting in the captain's chair and she is very frightened that this could be the end, you know, what will we do without Starfleet? If you listen, that music playing, that is the opening notes of the full version of the Star Trek Prodigy theme tune. If you haven't had a chance to go and listen to the soundtrack yet, please do. That particular theme is beautiful. Thank you everyone for watching along, and thank you so much to the team who create Prodigy every week. These are absolute legends. What did you think of this episode? Let us know in the comments below. Before I go on, everyone, this will be our last episode before Christmas Day, so a very Merry Christmas to you all. If you celebrate, have a wonderful, wonderful time. If you don't celebrate, have a great Sunday. You know, you look after yourselves, and however you're spending this holiday season, make sure that you live long and prosper. To our friends in Ukraine, our friends in Iran, our friends in China, and to everywhere in the world that is facing a difficult time, please stay strong and stay well. I will see you next week for the season finale of Star Trek Prodigy's first season. Everyone, have a wonderful Christmas. Make it so.